All right. So while some of these teams are wrapped up in the college football playoff, other schools are just worried about their future. And that means that we've got the coaching carousel in full swing. We've seen some big, surprising names get hired in the last few days. Let's start right there at the top. Bill Belichick is back in coaching, and he's back in college football coaching the North Carolina Tar Heels. Bro, what do you make of this hire for North Carolina?
It's freaking weird, man. This is a weird hire. I don't
They they,
understand it at
they
all.
got rid of their 74-year-old coach to hire a 72-year-old coach.
Yeah. And, congrats to UNC. I mean, Bill Belichick, by all accounts, is the greatest coach of all time in the pros. But how does that translate at college? Because you don't have contracts. You don't get to draft players. You have to recruit. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how he adapts to recruiting and how that fits in with how he runs a program, because he did give UNC a 400-page Bible of how the organization is to be ran.
Right. I think it's interesting to understand what his plan is. He's 72 years old, coming in to take over a program that for a long time people have seen as, one of those programs with potential. North Carolina is a very historical athletic program. They have a lot of money. Now it's generated by basketball, but they're always seen as one of those schools that could always just be on the cusp. If they just poured a little bit money into recruiting or just did this, they could make waves in the ACC. And they've always just never quite gotten there. They've had coaches come in, they've had some good years, but never kind of lived up to those expectations. So it'll be interesting to see if he can bring his system, which this last few years in the pros, after Tom Brady left, kind of wasn't working. He's going to bring that to the college game. It'll be interesting to see the staff he puts around him and how that shapes the game plan that they have. But yeah, it's real interesting to see what that's going to be.
I wonder if he even makes it to next season as coach. I really do. I feel like this could be like a really weird situation where he takes this job and now NFL season comes to an end. The NFL coaching carousel kicks in. It's only a $10 million buyout.
Yeah, but nobody wanted to hire him last year. Like, he interviewed for the Falcons job. Falcons didn't want to hire him.
I think he actually walked away from that.
You think?
Because there was an article the other day about how Bill Belichick felt about Terry Fontenot's just his arrogance of how he drafts. And I found that really interesting.
Considering that Terry Fontenot's drafts have been very questionable.
Sorry, I'm mad at the Falcons. That's a whole nother story.
So yeah, this is a weird one. We'll see what happens. There was another couple of interesting moves that happened. Dan Mullen is back in coaching. I thought for sure we were going to see him at his cush little job on ESPN for the next few years, but he's taken the job at UNLV, which is interesting because UNLV was very close to potentially making a playoff spot this year. Maybe if their quarterback hadn't quit, or if they could beat Boise State in that conference championship game, they may have been in the playoffs. So he's picking up a roster and a team that had some success as a group of 5 team. So we'll see what happens. Coaching was never the problem with Dan Mullen. It was the recruiting that was the problem. And so if he can go out there in the desert in this day and age of transfer portal and bring some players in who want to come and hang out in Las Vegas, maybe he can turn something out. What do you think? How do you think that's going to go out there?
Yeah, that is the question. Can he recruit? He didn't want to recruit when he was at Florida, and we saw how that turned out for him. It's probably not as big a deal at a school like UNLV because you don't have the same expectations that you have at Florida or even Mississippi State for that matter. And so there's probably going to be a much more relaxed environment for him. So I think it's going to be I think UNLV is going to be good at their level, right?
Yeah.
Like if it, they might have 1 or 2 years where Dan Mullen's able to get just some ridiculous player quarterback primarily. If he's going to get any great players, it's going to be a quarterback,
Right.
because he's a great quarterback coach. I mean,
Right.
what he did with
He
Dak
developed
Prescott and
Kyle Trask.
Kyle
Yeah.
Trask. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
Great work in college. But I think they're going to be fine. But it will be interesting to see how well he recruits and how much
Yeah.
he puts into it.
Yeah. So we had a couple of other interesting moves. We had 2 coaches go back to their former jobs after taking better jobs somewhere else for a few years, returning home. Rich Rodriguez is headed back to West Virginia, and Scott Frost is headed back to Central Florida. Obviously, Rich Rod left West Virginia, almost got the Alabama job famously before Nick Saban got it. Been many, many places since then, including Michigan, Arizona, and a couple other stops along the way. But he's going back home to West Virginia, where he led them to arguably their best success ever for that school. They were one stupid loss away from playing for a national championship. If Pat McAfee could make some kicks, they would have. And then Scott Frost, going back to UCF, he kind of built that program from a program that was winless to that year where they claimed that national title, even though they didn't win one, and kind of helped set the tone for that offensive juggernaut that Josh Heupel ended up stepping into before he left to go to Tennessee. Obviously, Scott Frost, the experiment going back to his alma mater at Nebraska didn't work out, but now he's going back to the place where he actually had success. And Central Florida's in the Big 12 now, so maybe a chance for them. He's taken over for Malzahn. We'll see what happens. Going back home, maybe he finds the magic that he had there early in his career.
Yeah, I think the Rich Rod back to West Virginia is probably the most interesting one out of all of these, just because he did have some terrific success at West Virginia. But is he going to? I mean, Pat White ain't walking through that door. Steve Slayton ain't walking through that door.
Pat McAfee ain't walking through that. Oh, wait, he might.
No, Pat McAfee will walk through the door. He already did. He was there to greet him.
They were serving beer at his press conference. Like, who serves beer at your coach's introductory press conference? West Virginia does.
I mean, that's awesome. You sure they're not in the SEC?
Yeah. So like I said, overall, the coaching carousel is definitely spinning. One other job to mention, Barry Odom did go to take the job at Purdue. I always liked him when he was the coach at Missouri. A good defensive coach, bounced around. Purdue's kind of had some down years after. They always like to play the shocker and jump up and beat somebody they shouldn't every year, but they've been down, kind of the worst team in the Big Ten. So we'll see if he can go there and kind of turn them around. It'll be tough now that the 2 other schools in this state are both in the college football playoff. But we'll see what happens there. All right. Well, I think that'll wrap us up for this week. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave us a comment, and we'll get back to you. But until then, go Dogs.
Go Dogs.